Hi, welcome to Properties of Sound, and in this unit we will cover the fundamentals of what sound is, and we'll also talk about how we hear. Um, so let's just jump right in. Okay, so sound is travels in waves, right? And those waves are created by compressing particles. And if you look up here at this diagram, you'll see that this speaker is creating sound and it's compressing the air molecules into compressed regions and rarefactions or open areas, right? So it compresses and they expand, it compresses and they expand. And that could be expressed as a wave form. The same is true with a tuning fork. When you strike a tuning fork, it creates a wave and it compresses the particles of air, and those compressed particles then travel away from the tuning fork and they continue to be generated and travel away, creating these waves, right? So so there's compression and expansion of particles as they move away. Um, those waves then can be measured, right? We have units of measure that we can apply to them. We have the amplitude, right? And the amplitude is going to correspond to how many molecules are being moved at any given time. And then we can also measure the wavelength, or the distance between the peaks or the distance between the troughs, how far apart those waves those are. So now moving to our hearing, right? So we use our ears to hear, and most creatures have ears that they hear with, or some auditory organ, right, that they can listen with. I'll bet that everyone at some point has done this, and if you have not, I encourage you to experiment with it. Your ear is designed to actually focus that energy into your ear, and by putting your hand up to your ear, you actually increase the area. Even if you're just talking on your own and you put your hand up to your ear like that, you'll hear that it gets louder. You're actually focusing more of that energy into your ear. I spoke a second ago about animals, right? Animals have the ability to actually turn their ears, right? A horse, a cat, a fox, a dog, they can all actually rotate their ears to be able to focus more energy. It helps to determine where a sound is coming from, right? So even if your roommate were to come up behind you and say something, you can tell whether they're on your left or your right. We use our ears to actually locate sound in space, right? It's a directional tool. Next slide, right? So the sound is now coming into our ear. This sound wave, these waves of compressed molecules are focused into our ear by our outer ear, by our ear lobe, and or our hand to make it louder. And then these waves then are concentrated as they move into the ear canal. Once they're in the ear canal, then they strike the eardrum, which is a diaphragm. It's material then that receives those vibrations, those vibrations of molecules, and translates them into motion, right? So that motion then is passed through three inner ear bones, right, that are all connected, and ultimately then wind up vibrating a fluid-filled organ known as the cochlea. There are a lot of nerve cells that are within the cochlea that then feed those sound wave impulses, convert them into neural energy, and pass that along to the brain, where our brain then interprets them as sound. And I want to spend a little time talking about the cochlea, because the cochlea is a pretty amazing organ. Um, and it is the heart and soul, if you will, of how we hear. The cochlea is lined with little hairs, and those hairs actually move corresponding to the different wavelengths of sound that come in. So sound that comes in then is passed all the way through the cochlea, and along the way, different wavelengths will vibrate different cells, and until it's passed all the way around. So that's how you can tell the difference between a flute and a tuba. The sound of a tuba may be picked up at the later in the cochlea, and the sound of a flute may be picked up earlier. So each individual hair inside of here corresponds to a very specific wavelength, and then that's how our brain interprets sound. And I think that that's what we have for right now. Sound is a really powerful thing, and it's emotional to us, and it's one of our primary senses. And so I'll see you again in another video.